This presentation from the Notebook on Life applies Christian principles to daily living. We've moved from values to perception, and today we'll visit the third and fourth component, that of diagnostics and alternatives. A key ingredient in diagnostics is how you interpret the information gathered. In the diagnostic section, we will also explore a little deeper into the brain's function. In the book by Tim LaHaye, Why You Act the Way You Do, we find temperaments. These are personality traits that influence the decision process. We will introduce them here because of the analytical nature and explore them in greater detail in the Leadership and Team Building series. Research scientists have divided them into 4 classes. The many authors on this subject have given them different names. However, they all are similar in function. The predominant left brain melancholy is the most analytical and can develop analysis paralysis if taken to the extreme. The color associated with this group is blue. The next is the phlegmatic. This individual is an amiable and gets along with most people. They are great planners, and if taken to the extreme will develop a great plan that will never be implemented. The color associated with this group is green. The people who will have the most difficulty with analysis will be the sanguine and the choleric. The sanguine is the most expressive of the 4 and is the salesman. They display impulsive tendencies and are everybody's friend. The color associated with this group is yellow. The choleric is the driver of the 4. They are the ones that take charge and get things done. The color associated with this group is red. If their actions are uncontrolled, they will develop the ready, shoot, aim tendency. They will act first and suffer the consequences later. They have a tendency to have what is called foot and mouth disease. They speak before engaging their brain. Peter in the Bible was a choleric. All 4 temperaments work together and can achieve great things. Depending on your predominant brain side and your blend of temperaments, your decisions may be different than others. We'll start the diagnostic process with the mindset of the melancholy. In this diagnostic step, we'll make a list of our perceptions. That is, how we feel about the issue at this time. Take a piece of paper and fold it in half vertically. We're about to make a truth table. Be honest and list on one side what you like, and on the other side what you dislike. And do the same for good and bad, and what is for or against the decision. While making this list, you will find that you have made certain assumptions. You need to find out for yourself if the assumptions are correct. You may also find that you presumed that something was true or false, and you may need to correct that thinking. We need to examine the facts. We need to ask 2 questions. What do I need to know about this opportunity or decision? And how do I obtain the knowledge? The next set of questions that we need to ask are, what is the goal of this decision, and is this a need or a desire? Sometimes desires to have what someone else has can make us discontent with what God has already given us. That was the case with Korah and Adoniah as recorded in Numbers 16 and 1 Kings 1. What if this goal is to fulfill a need? The 4 lepers' goal in 2 Kings 7 was a true need. These guys were starving, not like Esau that we saw in perceptions. They may not have made a list or written down the good and bad, yet listen to their reasoning. 2 Kings 7 verses 3 through 10 says, Now there were 4 lepers sitting outside the city gates. Why sit here until we die, they ask each other. We will starve if we stay here, and we'll starve if we go back into the city. So we might just as well go out and surrender to the Syrian army. If they let us live, so much the better. But if they kill us, we would have died anyway. As we saw in part 2 of decision making, when the decision reaches the gain and loss stage, the lepers saw all gain. They had nothing to lose. Their risk factor was low. However, there were some unknown factors. In any decision you make, you will never have all the data. So what happened to the lepers? Verses 10 through 20 tells us that they found food and more. They made the right decision. Moses asked these questions in Numbers 13. Moses made a list of what he needed to know in verses 18 through 20. He then sent out the 12 spies to get the information. Even after bringing back the information, we saw in the perception stage that they misinterpreted it and came to the wrong decision. Don't let the negative cause you to lose sight of the positive. Weigh the two carefully. Don't let the potential difficulties blind you to God's power and His promise to guide. You can have all the right data and still make the wrong decision. Through prayer, God gives us insight into using the data correctly. In gathering the data firsthand, you eliminate the hearsay of others. During the diagnostic phase, Nehemiah was gathering information that he would use in the building of the wall. Nehemiah 2:13 through 16 tells us that he went to see for himself. Why gather your own information? Proverbs 14:15 tells us that you cannot believe everything that you are told. Proverbs 18:13 tells us not to jump to a decision without knowing the facts. You have to check it out. Proverbs 18:17 says, any story sounds true until you hear the other side and sets the record straight. There are always two sides to any story. People always want you to see it from their viewpoint. It is amazing to hear what the other side has to say. Proverbs 28 and 1 Thessalonians 5:21 and 22 tells us what to do. Carefully weigh all the evidence. Diagnostics test both fact and fiction. Don't let the misinterpretation of the facts cause you to make the wrong decision. Because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it's wrong or it doesn't exist. Check it out. What methods do we apply to determine the truth? In computer software programs, decisions are made using the if-then statement. The database that the software program uses has been verified and the answers can be trusted. However, our brain or database is obtaining new information every day. When using the if-then statement, you must be careful. Behind the if is an assumption. Question: are the assumptions based on values or perceptions? For example, take the frog that was being examined in the biology classroom. Here was the student's findings. Hit the table and say, "Jump, frog, jump." Results: frog jumps. Cut off frog's front legs and hit the table and say, "Jump, frog, jump." Results: frog jumps. Cut off one back leg, hit the table, and say, "Jump, frog, jump." Results: frog jumps to the side. Cut off frog's second back leg, hit the table, and say, "Jump, frog, jump." Results: frog becomes hard of hearing and did not jump. Did the student jump to the wrong conclusion? When your if-then statement is wrong, your conclusion will be wrong. Have you ever seen a soap commercial where a beautiful woman is shown using the product? What assumptions do the advertisers want you to make? First, the soap is keeping the woman beautiful. Second, if I use the soap, I'll be beautiful too. Third, the decision. I'll buy the soap. Bingo! What did the advertiser want you to do? Make the decision to buy the soap. Did you make the right decision? Maybe the soap will keep you beautiful. Only time will tell. The same is true with some decisions. Did you hear about the red house that was made out of red bricks? And the blue house that was made out of blue bricks? And the pink house that was made out of, that's right, pink bricks. The black house was made out of black bricks. Question: what would a greenhouse be made out of? Logical conclusion is green bricks, right? Wrong. Everybody knows that a greenhouse is where flowers grow, and it's mostly made out of glass. This method is used by the salesman to get you to buy their product. If they can get you to agree on several points, such as the color of the car, the style of the car, the comfort of the car, how great you look in the car, then the logical conclusion is buy the car. Talking about cars, what if you were in the market to buy a car? How would you go about making the decision on which car to buy? I'd like to share with you a comparison chart that I use when trying to evaluate which is better. It's called a partial pairs analysis. You need to decide what the major consideration factors are when buying a car. For this example, I chose 4: price, condition, miles per gallon, and number of people. There are some other factors that you must have in your database. That is, your brain. Is this car for you or someone else? If the car is for you, is this your only car, or is it your second car? If this is your only car, what is the primary function? Next, we need to make a square box and divide it into 4 equal spaces in both the horizontal and vertical axes. Put the 4 major factors along both axes. Now, we'll compare the factors. Ask the question: is the price or cost of the car more important than how it looks or runs? Some condition factors are how many miles does it have on it, or is it new? If the conditions and how it runs is more important, then put a 1 in the vertical column under conditions. If the car is new and you have limited funds, then the price of the car would be more important, and you would move the 1 to the vertical column under price. Next comparison. Is price more important than cost of maintenance? This decision may be more difficult if your funds are limited. Cost of maintenance includes gas mileage and cost for repair. A BMW may get less gas mileage and cost more to repair than a Honda. With limited funds, you would put a 1 in the vertical column under price. Why are you buying this car? For transportation to work or to transport a family? How many people will you want to carry? If it is just you, then the number of people is not as important as price. Therefore, put the 1 in the vertical column under price. What about the other comparisons? Is the current condition of the car more important than the cost of maintenance? This comparison depends upon how old the car is or if it is new. If it is a used car, how soon will it need repair? Can you repair it yourself? How much gas will it use in a week? If the car is in good condition, then the cost of maintenance will depend upon gas mileage. This is a harder decision. For this chart, we will say that the running condition is more important than the gas mileage, and we'll put a 1 in the vertical column under condition. What about condition versus people? This decision is easier if you're buying the car for yourself to drive to work. Condition is more important than the number of people. What about maintenance versus people? Maintenance wins, and the one goes in the vertical column under maintenance. You now add up the vertical columns, and the one with the most numbers has the highest priority. We really did not need to make a chart for this decision, since limited funds overrode all other factors. But what if you had 10 or 20 factors that needed to be compared? Then the task gets more complicated. Now that we know that price is the issue, what other values come into focus? Did the Bible say, do not buy you fill in the blank, say a Lamborghini, a Ferrari, Rolls-Royce, whatever car you like? Will this car occupy all your free time? Will you give it special attention? Did you buy the car because one of your friends had one and you wanted one just like it? Here are 4 character qualities that you can compare. We'll not take the time to do it now. However, after you compare them and you get your answer, you need to compare them to Matthew 5. You decide which has top priority. Let's go back to the car decision. The partial pairs only establish the priority of values that you want in a car. We have to select a car. The next step is to take the priorities that you have established and use them as a weighting factor. We now have to compare the features that each car has and establish a desirability factor. What is the most desirable feature of each car? Are there extra features? Are there some basic features that each car must have? Are there any features that are missing or undesirable? And finally, are there any main features that are lacking? We'll use a scale from -6 to +6 for desirability. Our next step is to create a trade study using our priorities and desirabilities. This trade study picked 3 cars. Car 1 is a Chevy Trailblazer for $10,000. It has 100,000 miles and gets 15 miles per gallon. Due to the number of miles, we used above average cost to repair. The second car is a Cadillac 4-door sedan for $20,000 with 50,000 miles and gets 18 miles per gallon. Since it has half the mileage of the first car, we'll use average cost to repair. The third car is a new Chevy Cruze 4-door sedan for $30,000 with 5 miles and gets 30 miles per gallon. Cost to repair is low since it is new and has a new car warranty. We can now enter the priority values. You will notice that we split the maintenance into 2 lines, one for gas mileage and one for repair. The priority value for cost was 3. For miles driven was 2. For miles per gallon in repair was 1. The next set of numbers entered are for desirability. Car 1 gets a +6 since it's the lowest cost and our budget is limited. Car number 2 gets a -3 because it costs more. Car number 3 gets a -6 because it would put a severe strain on our finances. When it comes to miles driven, car number 1 gets a -6 since it has 100,000 miles and can be expected to need repair soon. Car number 2 gets a 1 since it has half the miles that car number 1 has, and car number 3 gets a +6 because it is new and under warranty. What about gas mileage? Car number 1 has the lowest gas mileage. We'll give it a -3. 15 miles per gallon is not as bad as 8 miles per gallon, yet in today's cost for gasoline, every mile counts. Car number 2 gets better mileage, and most cars are in this range. We'll give it a 1 for average. Car number 3 has double the mileage, of car number 1, so we'll give it a +3. Regarding repair, car number 1, the repair will be above average, so we will give it a -3. Car number 2 is average, and we'll give it a 1. And car number 3 is new, so it gets a +3. We're almost there, so stay with me. We'll now multiply the priority factor by the desirability factor to get our totals. All that is left is to add up the totals. What do the totals tell you? Since car 1 and car 3 have the same totals, what does that mean? Does this study raise new questions that need to be answered before the decision is made? Things like, how would doing the maintenance myself affect the cost? How far will I drive in 1 year? How much more will it cost for gasoline for car 1 than car 3? There are more features and variables that must be considered before you invest in a new car. Things like insurance and license fees. This trade study is just a starting example of the diagnostic process that you need to do before a major decision is made. You may want to ask for help before you make the decision, and that's where the next step comes in. That of asking advice from others about the decision. You may have evaluated all of the information and believe that you have an answer, yet have you developed selective focus? Has your perception overridden your diagnostic evaluation? If it has, then the alternative step becomes even more important. This is the step that Eve bypassed when she was talking to the serpent in the garden. Alternatives include seeking advice from others. They may have had the same decision facing them, and they may have insights that you have overlooked. When you get others' viewpoints on a decision, you're able to increase your focus and see it from an alternative view. What does the Bible have to say about alternatives? There are at least 12 verses in Proverbs that talk about seeking advice. Here are 3 of them. You don't need everyone's agreement. You need the truth. The viewpoint of others is important, yet you need to evaluate it. You must be careful when seeking advice. We will see later how easy it is to get the wrong advice. In the Old Testament, there are many examples of how kings asked for others' viewpoints. Here are some examples of both good and bad advice. In Numbers 13:30, we see Caleb's evaluation, and his recommendation was yes. In 1 Kings 12:6, Solomon's son asked advice from his father's counselors, and they gave him advice. And another example in 1 Kings 22:7 and 8, where the king was asking for more counsel. In contrast, we find in Numbers 13:33, the 10 spies gave opposite advice. In 1 Kings 12:6, the same opposing advice. Then in 1 Kings 22:6, we find that 400 prophets all said the same thing. It's easy for us to want people who will support our viewpoint. In 1 Samuel, David's brother wanted to protect his little brother from danger. He said, "You cocky brat, go home and attend the sheep." King Saul told him to do the same thing. The question is, who is your best advisor? The answers we get from others need to be put through the diagnostic process and evaluated. Remember the 2 goals, that of having wisdom and common sense? You need to ask the question, what do I know to be true and what makes sense? We need to ask God to direct our thoughts. How would you respond if someone told you that they had a message from God for you? Here's how Nehemiah handled information that was given to him. He tested the information. Had he taken the advice as a message from God, he would have been wrong. This is why it's important to know God's Word in order to test the information that we receive. 1 Thessalonians 5:21 and 22 tells us what to do. One may say, why ask for advice if it may turn out to be bad? We must be willing to listen to both sides in order to better evaluate how to proceed. This brings us to the final step, validation. It is reviewing your decision one more time. Making successful decisions in the past does not guarantee successful decisions in the future. Just ask Joshua about his first attempt to capture Ai and his agreement with the kings of the surrounding area as recorded in Joshua 7 through 9. Joshua did not talk to God before he went ahead. During this final phase of decision-making, one of the most important steps is to ask God for his guidance. Why? Because many of the plans we set into motion cannot be reversed. It is best to think of the potential consequences before we launch into an action we may later regret. The example here starts in Matthew 26:14 and 15, where Judas went to the chief priests, and it finishes in Matthew 27:3 through 10, where Judas went out and hung himself. Next time, we'll take an in-depth look at this validation process. You won't want to miss this vital step in the decision-making. This is where we put everything together.